Did you agree with what the union executive was suggesting? There be a midnight strike on Friday night, Bob? Did you stand by that decision?
Well, I always stand by the majority, and that's the responsibility I have as leader of this organization, whether it be a vote on the executive board or with the membership. I always side with the majority, and I take that direction very seriously. The fact is that ideally we would have loved to have had service continue on until 2:30 a.m. But the fact is that the executive board has a very clear directive. I had discussions with the TTC, and they didn't dispute some of the concerns that we were raising. I think the TTC had some concerns also about the safety of their equipment, as well as the safety of the operators. So I'm not going to go so far as to say that they agreed, but I will say that they did not dispute any of the concerns that we had raised if we had, in fact, kept service out there.
Bob, what about the safety of transit riders in the city of Toronto? That certainly at issue on 1 minute after midnight. Once the strike took place, there were people who were stranded in various parts who were dependent on transit.
Well, the fact of the matter is when we withdraw services, there's always going to be people stranded. And, you know, we sympathize with those people, and we regret the fact that it had to happen when it happened. But the fact is I have an obligation, not only a legal obligation, but a moral obligation after the best interest of my 9,000 members. And I'm very reluctant to make any apologies for doing that. The fact is if we had permitted service to continue on and one of our operators had been seriously injured through assault, we'd be talking about that this morning, and my members would be questioning the executive board and myself as to why we permitted that to happen. We have a responsibility to look out for the well-being of our 9,000 members, and that's what we did.
There is some question about the safety of your workers. If you saw the legislature yesterday, the Premier stood up, Brad Dogood said it as well, as did Bob Runciman and Howard Hampton, urging Torontonians to be kind to the workers once they went back to work, realizing that perhaps this snap strike may have put them in an even more dangerous position.
Well, the fact is, and I've said it many times, 99% of our people are very good, law-abiding people. You know, get on the bus, good morning, pay their fare, and read their paper on their way to work. You know, we have that 1% of the population that aren't very nice to our frontline people and can be verbally and physically abusive to our people. We're hopeful that Torontonians will reflect some of the statements that were made in the legislature yesterday, and we have confidence that for the most part they will. You know, if there are people that don't, then we're hopeful that the appropriate action will be taken, the law will be called in, the police will be called in, and the appropriate action will be taken against those individuals.
The response that we gathered over the weekend from Torontonians live here on CP24 was very negative about what took place and the move that the union made to pull the plug on service midnight Friday night. Do you care how Torontonians, whether they are citizens and or transit riders, do you care about that response?
Absolutely, and not only do I care, I know the entire executive board along with our 9,000 members care. The fact is, my daughter was one of those individuals that was stranded downtown. You know, she was unaware of what was going on. She did not know that there was going to be a strike also. And we regret that fact. But again, I must reiterate, Ann, our priority is to represent our members and do what is in the best interest of our members. And we did that. And obviously, we sympathize with the public. I mean, our people deliver a service to the public that is crucial. And we recognize that more than anybody. I mean, I grew up in a single-parent home. I know what it's like to have to rely on public transit. And we take that very seriously. But the fact still remains that our membership made a decision, and we support that decision.
Bob, did you bow to pressure from the union executive to call that strike at midnight? Is your job in jeopardy? Did you feel the pressure that you had to satisfy the union executive rather than your union members?
The fact is, it's not about satisfying my executive or anyone else. It's very clear in our bylaws that the president of the local must support the consensus of the majority. That's what I've done throughout these entire negotiations. That's what I will continue to do. The fact of the matter is the president in our local does not vote unless it's a secret ballot, and I'm obligated to follow the majority. I have done that, like I say, throughout the negotiations, and I will continue to do that in the future. As far as my job being, I believe that I still have the support of the majority of the membership, and I know that I have the support of the executive board. That has been communicated to me over the weekend. I have spoken with even some of the executive that did not agree with the tentative settlement, and they have conveyed to me their unconditional support for my leadership, and I plan on leading this organization for the remainder of my term.
You spent time, energy, and money on a campaign to promote goodwill for your workers. How are you going to shore up the change in sentiment when it comes to how the City of Toronto, whether it is politicians, city councillors, transit users, drivers themselves, meaning vehicle drivers, just people in this city, how are you going to shore up that lack of support now?
Well, we've got a lot of work to do. There's no doubt about that. I think that we want to build an alliance with the public out there, particularly the people that utilize the TTC. You know, there's a lot of frustration about the strike. There's no doubt about it, Ann, but I think that there's even more frustration about the lack of service out there and the substandard service that people are receiving for higher and higher costs. I think that there's a lot of frustration in regards to those issues. Obviously, the strike has compounded that frustration, but I think that although there's a lot of frustration directed at, you know, me personally, our membership, there's an underlying frustration amongst the public because of the substandard service that they're receiving and the lack of funding from the upper levels of government. You know, it was interesting yesterday to see how quickly the Liberal government could convene the House in order to legislate us back to work. It would be nice if they would convene the House, to ensure that Toronto gets the funding that it not only needs but deserves. So we're hoping that in the coming months that the provincial government will begin to address some of those issues. We can begin to build an alliance with the public to ensure that they have an efficient, transit system, a system that's reflective of what they're paying. And right now, that's not happening.
There are rumors out there, Bob Kinnear, that this was part of an overall plan, the timing of this, that there was a lot of lag time from a week ago Sunday when you made the announcement at 5:45 that there was a tentative agreement, a tentative contract. Many days passed until the ratification vote that it happened. And that the plug was pulled on the service on Friday night, just enough time to get the legislature to convene on Sunday to put you in a position now where an arbitrator will be brought in and, in fact, maybe even give you a better deal than what the TTC Commission gave you.
Well, if you're suggesting, if I heard the question right, you're somewhat suggesting that this was orchestrated and this is the position that we wanted to find ourselves in. With all due respect, Ann, those comments and that insinuation is completely false. The fact of the matter is we believe in collective bargaining. We believe in the right to strike. At the end of the day, collective bargaining works. 98% of the time, the parties are able to resolve their disputes and come to an amicable agreement that both parties can live with. We've now in a situation where we're putting that into a third party's hands. Sometimes you will receive decisions that neither party will be happy with or reflect of what they were looking for. So collective bargaining is always a better process, and that's the process that we want to maintain, as well as the right to strike.
If you could go back in time, would you do anything differently, Bob?
Well, Ann, it's easy to look back and speculate. Hindsight is always 20/20. I'm comfortable with the way that I've led my membership over the last 4.5 years, and I will continue to do that to the best of my ability. I am very fortunate to represent, 9,000 dedicated people that provide such a vital service to the citizens of Toronto. And I plan on doing that to the best of my ability as long as I remain in office.